The air was thick with the scent of olive trees and the distant hum of cicadas as I stood in the shadow of the crumbling temple. Its once majestic columns were now cracked and weathered, their surfaces etched with symbols I could barely decipher. The temple of Zeus, forgotten by time, stood as a silent sentinel overlooking the valley below. I had come here seeking inspiration for my next tale, but what I found would change everything. My name is Calliope, and I am a bard. Not the kind who sings of heroes and their glorious deeds in crowded halls, but one who wanders the forgotten places, collecting stories that others have left behind. The gods may have abandoned this world, but their whispers still linger in the ruins they left behind. And I am a gatherer of whispers. The scroll was hidden beneath a loose stone in the temple's inner sanctum, its edges frayed and brittle with age. I almost missed it, but something about the way the moonlight caught the stone's edge made me pause. When I pulled it free, the scroll seemed to hum faintly in my hands, as if alive with secrets. Unrolling it carefully, I saw words written in a language I didn't recognize, yet somehow understood. Asterisk, 3 gifts lie hidden in the thunder's shadow. 3 truths the king conceals. To wield them is to shape the world anew, but to reveal them is to risk its end. Asterisk, my heart raced as I read the words again and again. 3 gifts. 3 truths. What could they mean? And why had Zeus, the king of the gods, hidden them? I had heard countless tales of his thunderbolts, his tempers, and his many loves, but never this. Never secrets. As I stood there, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. It sounded like a voice, but not one I could place. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was asterisk. Asterisk, seek the oracle of the forgotten grove. Asterisk, it said. Asterisk, she will guide you to the first truth. Asterisk, I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The voice was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving only the rustling leaves and the distant cry of an owl. But the words lingered, echoing in my mind. The oracle of the forgotten grove, I had heard of her. She was said to dwell deep in the forest, where the trees grew so thick that even the sun struggled to pierce their canopy. Few who sought her ever returned, and those who did spoke of riddles and visions that drove them mad. But I had no choice. The scroll had chosen me, and the whisper had confirmed it. This was no ordinary tale, it was a calling. I left the temple as the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. My journey would take me far from the safety of the villages, and into the wilds where the old gods still held sway. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew one thing for certain. The story I was about to uncover would be unlike any I had ever told. As I walked, the scroll tucked safely in my satchel, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The forest seemed to close in around me, its shadows stretching long and dark. But I pressed on, driven by a curiosity that burned brighter than my fear. The first truth awaited, and I would not rest until I found it. The forest was alive with whispers, not the kind that came from the wind or the rustling leaves, but the kind that seemed to rise from the earth itself, as if the very ground beneath my feet was trying to speak. I had been walking for hours, the dense canopy above blocking out the sun and casting the world in an eerie twilight. My satchel, heavy with the scroll, felt like it was growing heavier with every step, as if the secrets it contained were weighing me down. The oracle of the forgotten grove was said to dwell in the heart of this forest, where the trees grew so close together that their roots intertwined like the fingers of ancient giants. Few mortals dared to venture this deep, and those who did often returned with tales of madness and despair. But I had no choice. The whisper had guided me here, and the scroll's cryptic message burned in my mind like a brand. 3 gifts lie hidden in the thunder's shadow, 3 truths the king conceals. To wield them is to shape the world anew, but to reveal them is to risk its end. What did it mean? What were these gifts, and why had Zeus hidden them? The questions gnawed at me, driving me forward even as the forest seemed to close in around me, its shadows growing darker and more oppressive with every step. I was so lost in thought that I almost didn't notice the figure standing in the path ahead. It was a woman, her hair long and wild, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She wore a robe of woven leaves and moss, and her presence was so otherworldly that I knew immediately who she was. "The oracle. You seek answers," she said, her voice echoing as if it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "But are you prepared for the cost?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I seek the truth," I said, my voice trembling. "The truth about Zeus's hidden talents." The oracle's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might turn me away. But then she nodded, a slow, deliberate motion that sent a shiver down my spine. "Very well," she said. "But know this, the path to truth is fraught with peril. The gods do not give up their secrets lightly, and those who seek them often pay a heavy price." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I understand." The oracle turned and began to walk deeper into the forest, and I followed, my footsteps silent on the soft, moss-covered ground. The air grew colder as we walked, and the whispers grew louder until they were almost deafening. Finally, we reached a clearing, and in the center stood a pool of water so still and dark that it looked like a mirror of obsidian. The oracle gestured for me to approach, and I did, my reflection staring back at me with wide, fearful eyes. "Gaze into the pool," the oracle said, "and you will see the first truth." I hesitated, my hands trembling as I knelt beside the water. The surface was so still that it seemed to draw me in, and as I stared into its depths, the world around me faded away. I saw Zeus, not as the mighty king of the gods, but as a young man standing on a mountaintop with a storm raging around him. Lightning crackled in the sky and the wind howled like a beast. But Zeus stood calm and still, his eyes closed as if in meditation. And then I saw it. With a gesture, Zeus slowed the storm, the lightning freezing in midair as if time itself had stopped. He reached out, his fingers brushing against a bolt of lightning, and I realized with a shock that he wasn't just controlling the storm. He was controlling time itself. The vision shifted, and I saw Zeus using this power to save a mortal woman from certain death, her life hanging by a thread as he slowed time just enough to pluck her from the jaws of fate. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the vision ended, and I was back in the clearing, gasping for breath. "The first truth," the oracle said, her voice soft but firm. "Zeus can manipulate time, though only in small, localized bursts. It is a power he has kept hidden for fear of what might happen if it were known." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Why?" I asked. "Why would he hide such a gift?" The oracle's eyes darkened, and for a moment she looked almost sad. "Because," she said, "there are some truths that are too dangerous to be known. And because the gods are not as infallible as they would have you believe." Before I could ask more, the ground beneath me began to tremble, and the whispers grew into a deafening roar. The oracle's form began to dissolve, her body turning to mist as the forest around us seemed to come alive. "Go," she said, her voice barely audible over the noise. "The gods are watching, and they do not take kindly to those who seek their secrets." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and ran, the forest closing in around me as the whispers grew louder and more insistent. I didn't stop until I was out of the forest, my heart pounding and my breath coming in ragged gasps. But even as I caught my breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The first truth had been revealed, but the journey was far from over. And the gods were not done with me yet. The forest spat me out like a seed, its whispers fading into the distance as I stumbled into the open air. My heart still raced from the encounter with the oracle, and the weight of the first truth, Zeus's ability to manipulate time, hung heavy in my mind. But there was no time to dwell on it. The gods were watching, and I could feel their eyes on me, even here in the safety of the sunlight. I had to keep moving. The scroll's message had spoken of 3 truths, and I had uncovered only one. The second truth awaited, and I had a feeling it would be even harder to find. The whisper had guided me to the oracle, but now I was on my own. I consulted the scroll again, hoping for some clue, some hint of where to go next. The words were the same as before, but as I stared at them, a new line seemed to shimmer into existence, as if written in invisible ink. "Seek the river that flows through shadow. Where the dead and the living meet, there the second truth lies hidden, in the depths where light and darkness greet." A river that flows through shadow. I had heard tales of such a place, a river that existed between worlds, where the boundaries of life and death blurred. It was said to be guarded by creatures born of darkness, and few who ventured there ever returned. But if the second truth lay hidden in its depths, I had no choice but to go. The journey was long and arduous. I traveled through valleys and over mountains, following the faintest of clues. a whisper in the wind, a shadow that moved against the sun. The land grew darker as I went, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed to press down on the earth. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath my feet was soft and yielding, as if it had been soaked in something other than water. Finally, I reached the river. It was unlike any river I had ever seen. Its waters were black as ink, and they moved with a slow, deliberate current, as if they were alive. The air above it shimmered with a faint, otherworldly light, and the shadows along its banks seemed to shift and writhe, as if they were watching me. I hesitated at the edge of the river, my heart pounding in my chest. The oracle's warning echoed in my mind. The path to truth is fraught with peril. But I had come too far to turn back now. I stepped into the water. It was colder than I had expected, and the current tugged at my legs with a strength that belied its slow surface. I waded deeper, the water rising to my waist, then my chest, until I was completely submerged. The world beneath the surface was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The water was not water, but something else, a liquid darkness that seemed to press in on me from all sides. I could see shapes moving in the distance, shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. They were coming closer, their forms becoming clearer as they approached. They were the guardians of the river, creatures born of shadow and death. Their eyes glowed with a cold, malevolent light, and their voices echoed in my mind, a cacophony of whispers that threatened to overwhelm me. "Turn back," they hissed. "Turn back or be lost forever." But I couldn't turn back. I had come too far, and the second truth was too important. I pressed on, the darkness closing in around me, the whispers growing louder and more insistent. And then, just as I thought I could go no further, I saw it. A light, faint but steady, glowing in the depths of the river. It was a beacon, a guide, and I swam toward it with all the strength I had left. The shadows clawed at me, their whispers turning to screams, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The light grew brighter as I approached, and I realized with a shock that it was coming from a figure, a woman, her form glowing with a soft, golden light. She was beautiful, but there was something sad in her eyes, something ancient and weary. "Calliope," she said, her voice echoing in the darkness. "You have come far, but the journey is not yet over." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I am the keeper of the second truth," she said. "And I will show you what you seek, but know this, the truth is not always what we expect." She reached out, her hand brushing against my forehead, and the world around me dissolved into light. I saw Zeus again, but this time he was not alone. He stood in a grand hall surrounded by the other gods. They were arguing, their voices rising in anger and frustration. Zeus raised his hand and the room fell silent. And then I saw it. With a gesture, Zeus healed a wound on Hera's arm, the flesh knitting together as if it had never been injured. The other gods stared in shock, their anger forgotten as they realized what had happened. Zeus could heal, not just himself but others as well. It was a power he had kept hidden, a gift he had never shared. The vision shifted, and I saw Zeus using this power to save a mortal village from a plague, his touch bringing life where there had been only death. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the vision ended, and I was back in the river, gasping for breath. The woman was gone, but her voice echoed in my mind. The second truth: Zeus can heal any wound, any illness, any affliction. It is a power he has kept hidden, for fear of what might happen if it were known. I swam to the surface, the shadows receding as I emerged from the river. The second truth was mine, but the cost had been high. The whispers still echoed in my mind, and I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on me. But there was no time to rest. The third truth awaited, and I had a feeling it would be the hardest of all to uncover. The gods were watching, and they were not done with me yet. The whispers followed me out of the river, clinging to my thoughts like shadows I couldn't shake. The second truth, Zeus's ability to heal, was now mine, but the cost had been steep. The darkness of the river had left its mark on me, and I could feel its weight pressing down on my soul. Yet there was no time to rest. The third truth awaited, and I knew it would be the hardest to uncover. The scroll's final clue shimmered into view as I unrolled it once more, the words glowing faintly in the dim light. "Ascend to the throne of thunder, where the king's power is laid bare. There the final truth lies hidden, in the heart of the storm's despair." The throne of thunder. It could only mean one place, Mount Olympus, the seat of Zeus's power. But how could I, a mortal, hope to reach the home of the gods? The journey alone would be perilous, and even if I succeeded, I would be walking into the lion's den. Zeus himself had been watching me, testing me, and now I would be stepping directly into his domain. But I had no choice. The third truth was the key to everything, the final piece of the puzzle that could either save or doom the world. The journey to Mount Olympus was a blur of exhaustion and determination. I traveled through valleys and over mountains, my body aching and my mind weary. The whispers from the river grew louder with every step, their voices a constant reminder of the darkness I had faced. Yet I pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose that burned brighter than my fear. When I finally reached the base of the mountain, I was met with a sight that took my breath away. The peak of Olympus was shrouded in storm clouds, lightning crackling across the sky like veins of light. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and the ground trembled with the force of the thunder above. I began the ascent, my legs trembling with every step. The path was steep and treacherous, the rocks slick with rain. The higher I climbed, the more the storm seemed to intensify, the wind howling like a beast and the lightning striking so close that I could feel the heat of it on my skin. And then, as I reached the summit, I saw it. The Throne of Thunder. It was a massive seat carved from stone, its surface etched with symbols of power and dominion. Zeus sat upon it, his form towering and regal, his eyes glowing with a light that seemed to pierce through the storm. He was not alone. The other gods stood around him, their faces a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Hera was there, her eyes narrowing as she saw me. Poseidon and Hades stood to either side, their expressions unreadable. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The storm seemed to quiet, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. "Calliope," Zeus said, his voice booming like thunder. "You have come far, but you tread on dangerous ground. What do you seek?" I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "I seek the truth," I said. "The final truth. The power you have hidden from the world." Zeus's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might strike me down where I stood. But then he leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And what will you do with this truth, mortal? Will you use it to save the world or to destroy it?" "I will use it to bring balance," I said. "To show the gods and mortals alike that power is not meant to be hoarded, but shared." The gods murmured among themselves, their voices a mix of anger and curiosity. Hera stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "You dare to challenge the king of the gods?" she demanded. "I dare to seek the truth," I replied. "And the truth is that Zeus's power is not his alone. It belongs to all of us." Zeus stood, his form towering over me. The storm around us seemed to grow more intense, the lightning striking closer and closer. And then, with a gesture, he silenced the storm. "Very well," he said. "You have proven yourself worthy. I will show you the final truth." He raised his hand, and the air around us seemed to shimmer. I felt a surge of power, a force so immense that it threatened to overwhelm me. And then I saw it. The third truth. Zeus's final hidden talent was the ability to strip other gods of their powers. With a gesture, he could render even the mightiest of the gods powerless, their abilities stripped away as if they had never existed. It was a power he had never used, a secret he had kept hidden for fear of what it might do to the balance of the world. The vision shifted, and I saw Zeus using this power to stop a war among the gods, his gesture silencing the conflict before it could destroy the world. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the vision ended, and I was back on the mountain, the storm raging around me. Zeus looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You have seen the truth," he said. "Now what will you do with it?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. The power to strip the gods of their abilities. It was a gift and a curse, a force that could bring peace or chaos. But I knew what I had to do. "I will use it to bring unity," I said. "To show the gods and mortals alike that we are stronger together than we are apart." Zeus nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Then you have learned the true lesson of power," he said. "It is not meant to be wielded alone, but shared." The gods murmured among themselves, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Hera stepped forward, her eyes softening. "Perhaps the mortal is right," she said. "Perhaps it is time for a new way." Zeus turned to the other gods, his voice booming. From this day forward, we will rule not as individuals, but as one. Our power will be shared, and our unity will be our strength. The gods nodded, their expressions solemn. The storm around us began to fade, the clouds parting to reveal the sun. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, the weight of the journey lifting from my shoulders. The third truth had been revealed, and with it the hope of a new beginning. As I turned to leave, Zeus called out to me. "Calliope," he said, "you have done what no mortal has ever done. You have uncovered the secrets of the gods and shown us the path to unity. For that you will be remembered." I nodded, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Thank you," I said. "But the journey is not over. There are still stories to be told and truths to be uncovered." Zeus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Then go, Calliope, and may your stories inspire the world." I left the mountain, the sun shining brightly overhead. The whispers were gone, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. The third truth had been revealed, and with it the hope of a new beginning. As I walked, I unrolled the scroll one last time, the words glowing faintly in the sunlight. 3 gifts lie hidden in the thunder's shadow, 3 truths the king conceals. To wield them is to shape the world anew, but to reveal them is to risk its end. I smiled, rolling the scroll up and tucking it safely into my satchel. The journey was over, but the story was just beginning.